The Kodiaq has proven to be an incredibly popular car for Skoda, and since its introduction in 2016, over 865,000 models have been shipped out worldwide. So replacing it, well, that's no mean feat. But it does bring us to this. It's the brand new Skoda Kodiaq, and it aims to build on the reputation of its predecessor with even more technology than before, but without losing that focus on practicality and everyday usability. So we've come out to sunny Spain to check out what this new 7-seater has to offer and whether or not you should be considering it as your next family SUV. The look of the new Skoda Kodiaq has definitely changed, but it's still recognisable as this brand's big 7-seater. It's got this cool split design for the headlights, and the grille has got even more impact than before. The wheel arches seem particularly boxy, and around the back, well, the rear lights are interestingly designed, shall we say. I just think that overall it doesn't look as well put together as the previous generation Kodiaq, and that was just quite a smart looking car. It's by no means ugly, I just don't think that it has the presence that the previous generation Kodiaq had. The previous generation Kodiaq was a masterclass in everyday practicality, and it's pleasing to note that a lot of that usability has been carried through to this new version. Now, prices for the new Kodiaq have risen slightly, so it's going to start around £36,000 and go up to £40,000 for this SEL version, which gets a couple of extra toys, but all cars come very well equipped as standard. There's a large central screen, we've got virtual displays ahead of us, but most importantly, we've got loads of storage options. You might note that the gear selector is now mounted on the column, and that frees up loads of space in the middle. So we've got deep bins down here, nice cup holders in the center, and there's also the block, which if you checked out our preview of the Kodiaq, you might have seen us look at, which is there for cleaning the screen. Pop that away though in its own little housing, and you've got another great cubby down the middle. Most important to the appeal of the new Kodiaq, however, are these new smart dials. Now, Skoda has obviously listened to everyone complaining about touchscreens, and that's myself included, and included proper dials which can be configured to control a variety of different items, such as the heating and ventilation, or in the driving mode, so you can toggle between them, choose your favorite functions, and then you can get to them quick and easily via these very solid and pleasing to use rotary controllers. You do still get a touchscreen which is packed with features, and in truth I'd like that to be a little bit clearer in its design, because you can get a little bit lost in all of its functions. There's just so much to go through. But other than that, this is still a very usable and genuinely, well, intuitive cabin to get along with, and I think that's in keeping with the original spirit of the Kodiaq. Now, the Kodiaq, as before, continues to be available in both 5 and 7-seater layouts. Now, the entry-level SE will only be available with 5, and from SEL above, that's when you get the option of between 5 or 7 seats. In its standard 5-seater layout, I've got plenty of space for my knees and plenty of room for my feet too. You can sit 3 abreast here, but there is quite a large transmission tunnel. However, it has been packed full of space boosting functions, like these large cubbies, which help to keep those looser items together and stop them from rolling about, and just helps to keep everything a little bit tidier. We've also got 2 USB-C chargers and a 12-volt socket, so there shouldn't be too many quarrels about who gets to top up their devices. And when it comes to those devices, we've also got some handy mounting points for mobile phones. That's a feature that isn't new to the Kodiaq. We've seen it on other Skoda cars, but it's one that's very useful and should take some of the noise out of those longer journeys. Other features that are good are the independent controls for the heating and ventilation, and these integrated sun blinds, which will certainly help if you've got a little one in the back here. Overall, it's pretty much the same as it was in the previous Kodiaq. I'd say you've just got slightly more space than you would have had before, but of course all those practicality features which we loved still remain. As you can see, the rearmost seats in the Skoda Kodiaq are what you could call occasional for adults. There's not a huge amount of room for my knees, and I'd say the person sitting ahead of me is going to be a little bit compromised in terms of leg space too, in order to move the seats so that everyone can sit comfortably. I think younger kids and smaller kids are going to be quite happy back here, but I think for adults it's really going to be quite a short trip, otherwise you're going to be a little bit uncomfortable. One thing I think has been missed off is some dedicated USB points for those people sat back here. There are some 12-volt sockets further back, but they're going to need an adapter. I would have liked to have seen a couple of USB sockets back here like we've seen in some of the Kodiaq's rivals. It's useful, but I'd say, as before, it's occasional. Obviously, with a car as large as the Skoda Kodiaq, you're expecting a certain degree of spaciousness, but Skoda has done well to increase things over the car it replaces. Now, With all 7 seats in place, you're getting a Super Mini rivaling 340 litres of luggage space, and that's up 70 litres on the car it replaces. Fold down the third row of seats and that rises to 840 litres. And if you fold down every single row of seats, that rises to just over 2,000 litres, showing that this car has loads of versatility when it comes to storage options, whether it being people carrying or luggage carrying. The Skoda Kodiaq has always had a pretty easygoing and intuitive driving experience. It's the sort of car that even if you're quite new to driving larger SUVs, you'll be able to get up to speed with in no time at all. And this car feels pretty much the same, to be honest. It's going to be available with a variety of different engines, including a plug-in hybrid, which could deliver up to 60 miles of electric-only range. That's a good option if you do have the ability to charge in. But I'm driving a more traditional setup. It's a 2-litre turbocharged diesel engine producing 190 brake horsepower and sending that power to all 4 wheels. Now, the overall experience that you're getting in the Kodiaq is quite smooth and refined. This car is riding on optional dynamic chassis control, which means that I can adjust the level of firmness that I'm getting from the suspension. Now, in its softer setting, it's not too bad. It feels a little bit wallowy through the bends, but then that's to be expected of quite a large SUV. In its firmer setting, well, I just think it's too uncomfortable for a car of this type. And actually, on the motorway, in those firmer settings, it just feels too unsettled to be a comfortable family SUV. No, I like it in its most comfortable mode, and at that point it allows the whole car to react just a little bit more conducively to those big potholes and the imperfections in the road. Visibility is good for such a big car. The pillars aren't too thick, and I've got nice light steering, which means that I can always position it just where I want to. As we've found in some Volkswagen Group products, the automatic gearbox linked up to this diesel does feel a little bit laggy, so you press down, it's not too bad, but it just feels like it's not quite as responsive as you might expect. Thankfully, with a 0 to 60 mile an hour time of 7.6 seconds, this more powerful diesel engine, there is a lower powered version, has more than enough performance for most occasions. What I will say that really shines through with the Kodiaq is its refinement. Despite a little bit of wind noise coming from those forward pillars, it's a very quiet car, and it certainly feels like the type of SUV that you'd want to do a nice long journey in. These seats on this SEL equivalent car are nice and comfortable too, and though you could go for the sportier buckets on the Sportline trim, I do think that these versions just feel like a better, well, everyday option really. I will say that despite it having grown and got more technology inside, the Kodiaq feels, well, quite similar to the old Kodiaq really, and I don't have a problem with that in the slightest. I really like the original Kodiaq, and certainly with its impressive sales record, you can understand why Skoda didn't want to upset the apple cart too much. Interestingly, something that I'm glad that Skoda has kept in, and something that I really loved on my Skoda Octavia long-termer, and if you want to check out that video, you'll be able to see a little more in-depth analysis of that car, but it's the quick-fire buttons that help you switch off the assistance system. So for instance, I can press that button, and with 2 little touches of this rotary controller, I can take off the lane assist and I can take off the speed warning. The lane assist in particular is quite intrusive on this car, and particularly on the motorway. Even when you're going through those longer sweeping bends, it just feels like it's trying to pull you around. It's just not very comfortable, to be honest, and I like to have that switched off. So to be able to do that without having to delve through loads of different screens is very important, and something, again, I think plays into that whole idea that Skodas are meant to be user-friendly and easy to get along with. One thing I will add is that though the forward visibility of the Kodiaq is good, those new, quite thick pillars at the rear mean the over-the-shoulder visibility isn't that impressive, and certainly at the back, the quite postbox-like rear screen, when you've got the seats in place, doesn't give you a huge amount of area to look out the back of. Of course, you've got a suite of cameras and sensors, so when you're doing that low-speed driving, it's not too bad. But if you just want to look over your shoulder, do a quick shoulder check when you're coming onto the motorway, or look behind you, it feels like you're being it feels like you're being intruded by quite a lot of material back with it, really. During our time with this diesel 4-wheel drive Kodiaq, we've been averaging around 39 mpg, which I think is quite impressive for a car of this size, and particularly given that we've been driving lots of hilly routes with steep ascents that have caused this car to be, well, a little bit more stressed than it probably would be usually. I think particularly on a long motorway run, mid-40s are probably doable. And if you want a bit of extra efficiency, then obviously you could go for the less powerful diesel option. But of course, if you are then looking to tow, or if you're going to be having your car loaded up more frequently, then this higher powered option will be a better one to go for, since it'll cause less stress overall. It'll just feel less weighed down. It's certainly got some really good torque low down, which you can lean on, and that's going to be becoming very helpful again if you are towing, or if you're going 7 up with plenty of kit and maybe a roof box or some bike racks. If you then put the car into its stiffest setting, then yeah, it feels a little more tied down than it would do. So it's nice to have that option. I'd say that if you are interested in driving a little more keenly, then that DCC pack is probably one to go for. One thing that does feel a little bit almost strange in this day and age is the sound of a clattery 4-cylinder diesel. I will say that despite this engine having a good amount of power and plenty of refinement when you are at speed, at slow speeds, if you put the window down, it sounds properly agricultural. Again, that's something that you can't really fault this engine for. It's how it's meant to be, and I'm sure that most people won't find that too much of an issue because, again, if you're buying a diesel SUV, you're not the kind of driver who's going to be putting the windows down and waiting to hear a lovely engine note. But yeah, it's quite surprising when you first drive this car at slower speeds and hear that going away in front of you. It's almost a little bit endearing in truth. Again, where those smart dials come into their own is when you are up to speed, changing little aspects just like the temperature or the speed of the fans becomes second nature and so much easier than having to go through a screen. It seems mad that we're having to go back to that, but it's just so much simpler and safer to be able to use a selection of dials that are pre-configured to exactly what you want, rather than having to go through a variety of different menus. And certainly when you jump in the car, obviously today we're dealing with some nice warm weather, but when you get in the car in those colder days and you just want to get the thing warm, you can just turn a dial and get straight there, rather than having to wait for the screen to wake up, wait for the menus to appear. It's just so much easier. I think that's going to be a really crucial function of the Skoda, but I think it's one that almost seems silly that we have to celebrate the fact that it's got easy controls. It doesn't have to be that tricky, really. It feels like the Kodiaq has been incrementally upgraded in all key areas. I particularly like the fact that it's more spacious, and I like the smart dials because it brings to the fore that usability which Skoda has become known for. I think the price rise has been justified by the increases in space and the amount of technology that you get on board too. And while I don't think the looks are quite as impactful as its blocky, good-looking predecessor, I still think it looks more than a rival for other SUVs on the market today. It certainly comes forward with a great sense of value because even though, as I mentioned, the prices have gone up, it's still got loads on board to keep people happy, and the option of a plug-in hybrid could make those savings even more apparent. All in, I think this is still a very complete 7-seater SUV, and one that's more than enough of a rival to other key offerings like the Hyundai Santa Fe or indeed the Volkswagen Group rival, the Volkswagen Tiguan. It's one that I'd be checking out if you're in the market for a new family-focused SUV. Thank you for watching this Motors new car review on the Skoda Kodiaq. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, please leave us a like below and let us know in the comments section whether you'd be picking the Skoda Kodiaq as your next family SUV. And since you're here, please remember to subscribe to the Motors YouTube channel, and if you hit that bell icon, then each time we upload a new video, you'll get a notification directly to your inbox.